Hello everyone and welcome back to Iraqi Dinar Hub. It's always great to have you here as we sort through the most up-to-date information surrounding the Iraqi dinar and global currency developments. Tonight's atmosphere across the community is buzzing, and for good reason. A wave of new reports suggests we may have finally moved from years of talking and guessing into an actual stage where things are happening behind the scenes. For so long, discussions about a revaluation were mostly based on rumors or scattered pieces of info that didn't lead anywhere. But what's emerging tonight feels different because it's tied directly to technical actions happening inside the global banking world. The main headline everyone is talking about right now has to do with something called contract rates, showing activity inside international banking systems. According to several sources who monitor financial networks, odd changes were spotted just before 7 p.m. local time, hinting that updated rate data was being uploaded into private exchange platforms. This isn't one of those situations where we hear about political meetings or vague statements from officials. This has to do with the actual systems banks use worldwide. If these reports are real, it means the dinar's value may no longer be sitting still inside those systems, which would be a major signal many people have been waiting to see. Understand why this matters? We need to break down what a contract rate actually is, since the term gets thrown around a lot, but usually without clear explanation. In big finance and structured redemption programs, a contract rate is basically a prearranged exchange value that is higher than what the average person would get when the new rate first becomes public. These types of rates are normally meant for groups like sovereign funds, large humanitarian organizations, or private holders who are part of early redemption setups. When these special rates start showing up in banking systems, it's usually seen as a sign that things are moving internally before the public phase begins. The timing of this activity is a big reason people are paying attention. The updates supposedly happen right before 7 p.m., which lines up perfectly with the normal operating routines of international banks. The window between early evening and around 11 p.m. Eastern is when banks around the world refresh their internal systems for the next trading day. During this period, they clear out transactions, update their ledgers, and sync with major financial hubs. If someone wanted to quietly push through a sensitive rate change, this would be the exact moment they'd do it, because the public markets are closed while the system resets. What makes things even more interesting is that this was happening on just one bank's system. People with access to back-end banking tools reported seeing similar updates across multiple institutions at the same time. That kind of coordination doesn't happen by accident. It almost always means a central authority sent out a directive that moves through global clearinghouses. When different systems update and sync, it's basically the financial world preparing itself for something that needs to be ready everywhere at once. Inside Iraq, what's happening in the local banking scene seems to match what's showing up technically behind the scenes. For weeks now, the financial sector in Iraq has been ramping up its messaging briefings from officials. Updates from the central bank, and a shift in language from cautious planning to clear statements of readiness. Reports from various regions say that banks have gone through full system upgrades, so they can operate smoothly with a higher valued dinar. This isn't theory anymore. These are the practical steps required for the country to function day-to-day with a changed rate. A big part of these preparations involves ATMs and bank branches across the country. There have been ongoing reports of machines being outfitted to handle different types of banknotes, including the lower denominations Iraq will need if its currency becomes stronger. When a currency increases in value, smaller notes become essential, so people can buy regular things like groceries without carrying large bills. The testing of these notes indicates the central bank is making sure the physical side of the transition is ready, not just the digital side. Another phrase that's been popping up in Iraqi news is currency reform completion, which seems aimed at preparing people mentally for what's coming. Public messaging like this matters because confidence plays a huge role in how smoothly any major currency change goes. When a government shows consistency in its messaging and pairs it with visible action, people start to trust the process. And when that public communication lines up with what the technical systems are showing, it paints a picture of a country approaching an important financial milestone. On a larger scale, everything happening fits with Iraq's long-term effort to strengthen its economy and rely less on the US dollar. Over the last few months, Iraq has been intentionally using its own currency for international deals and regional trade. That's a huge move, and it shows they want the dinar to stand on its own in the global market. If contract rates are being activated, That would be a natural next step in solidifying the dinar as a serious trade currency. There's also chatter from people watching the major banks in the United States. Some of them claim they've noticed placeholders or fluctuating fields for the dinar appearing on exchange screens. These placeholders don't reflect final values, but their behavior matters because it shows the data fields are now live instead of inactive. When those fields begin to flicker or update, it usually means the system is receiving information from global feeds and testing those connections so they are ready for actual numbers. All of this is tied to Iraq's adoption of the ISO 20022 standard, which is basically the modern global language banks use to communicate. Iraq has spent a lot of time upgrading its systems to meet this requirement, and now it can exchange richer financial data with major banking centers like the US and Europe. Becoming compliant with this standard is a big deal because it means Iraq is fully equipped to plug into global markets without technical roadblocks. People in Baghdad have also noticed banks updating their digital rate boards and signage, which is one of the most direct signs that changes are coming. Banks have been reminding citizens to stay calm and not rush branches, emphasizing that the process is being handled in a controlled way. This kind of organized communication is typical when countries prepare for currency adjustments because preventing panic is just as important as updating the systems. Understanding how this usually unfolds can help calm nerves. Once contract rates are turned on internally, banks typically enter a stage where they test their systems, run through their procedures, and make sure their staff is trained for the process ahead. This is basically the banking version of a rehearsal to ensure everything goes smoothly when people start coming in later. Because of the complexity, this phase is never rushed. After the testing phase, selected groups or individuals who are part of structured programs often receive notifications to schedule appointments. This happens privately and helps banks manage the flow of people in a controlled way before opening anything up to the general public. Only after this stage do rates typically show up publicly on currency sites and markets, allowing for a smooth and stable rollout. Tonight's alignment is what makes many people feel this moment is different from the years of rumors. In the past, we'd hear whispers of a rate change, but Iraqi officials or banking systems wouldn't show anything. Now, the messaging from Iraqi leadership, the technical system behavior, and the international banking indicators appear to be pointing in the same direction. When administrative decisions, technical infrastructure, and market signals all line up, it usually means something significant is in motion. The potential impact of a revalued dinar would extend far beyond Iraq. Other countries with undervalued or struggling currencies would be watching closely. A successful shift in Iraq could inspire similar reforms in places like Vietnam, or countries dealing with inflation issues like Zimbabwe. If Iraq shows that a currency can rebuild its strength through structural reform, it could push other nations to consider similar strategies. With all the energy around these developments, it's important for people to stay grounded. Moments like this tend to attract misinformation or scammers who try to take advantage of excitement. Real banks do everything officially and transparently. They send secret invitations or ask people to bypass normal procedures. Anything that feels shady should be ignored completely. Even when rates become visible, it's normal for there to be delays before actual exchanges happen. Banks need time to adjust their liquidity, complete required compliance checks, and verify everything is in place. These steps aren't obstacles, they're protections to ensure everything is done safely and legally. One of the most encouraging things right now is the growing optimism among everyday Iraqis. As visible signs of reform increase, people are starting to feel hopeful about their economy again. Businesses are planning for a future where the dinar has more buying power, which means cheaper imports and new opportunities. Investors from other countries are also paying attention, and growing confidence can help fuel economic growth on its own.